Hi, and welcome to Something to Talk About. Okay, let's take two. I think I'm a little brain damaged from being out in the sun too long. Welcome to Something to Talk About. Thank you for joining us. Before we begin our show on CSA's Healthy Eating Part 2, Dave has been kind enough to return, but before we talk to him again, I would like to thank my crew, Corey McNeil and Mike Duvall, who are staff members here and kind of keep BCAT running. And I'd also like to thank JT Marchant and Colleen Moore, who are volunteers here and help me out every week. And I just make sure to feed JT once in a while, and he's happy. And I really appreciate all the work that they all do. And one last thank you to my husband, Paul, for staying up and having daddy date night with Gwyneth and Evan. I hope you guys are having fun. And Gwyneth, Dave did bring a yellow box tonight, so we'll talk about it when I get home. And for all of my viewers that are tuning in, if you would like to talk to Dave or have a comment about the show, please feel free to call 781-270-9199. We are live this evening. If you think of a question afterwards or have a suggestion for a future topic or just wish to send us your thoughts via email, you can reach me at talk@bcattv.org. And I look forward to hearing from you. And now I would like to reintroduce our guest, Dave Dumorest, or David. I'm not sure. Farmer Dave. Thank you for coming.
Welcome.
It was so wonderful to have you a couple weeks ago that we didn't get through like half of the things that I wanted to talk about. So thank you for dropping everything and coming back.
You're welcome.
And hopefully we can pick up where we left off.
Sure.
But we might have to regress a little bit. So the last time we met, can you recap a little bit about what brought you here tonight other than a Ford truck?
You like that Ford vehicle, don't you?
Sorry.
Well, I mean, really, I think we could rename the show. Maybe Gwyneth would like this. Curious Linda and the Man with the Yellow Box.
I like that.
Because we have my yellow box.
Have
And
your
what's
yellow
in the
box?
yellow box? And you're curious.
But I'm not a monkey. Although I play one on TV.
But we have...
We have the dust bunny. Yes, we do.
It's a bunny. Maybe we could change it to a...
I do
monkey
have a
if you
stuffed
want.
Curious George at home.
There you go.
And if George is a monkey, why does he not have a tail?
I never thought about that, nor did I ever realize that.
And I think they put a lot of faith in that monkey.
What
Just
makes a monkey
saying,
tail
you know,
short? do
I
not
think
know.
Curious George is the prequel to Planet of the Apes,
Mm-hmm.
because they let that monkey do a lot. Anyway, we digress.
So yeah, to recap.
So you grew up around here.
I grew up around here. The last show we talked a lot about food, and I think it's telling that we didn't fit it all in one show, because the food that we eat is something to talk about. It is very important.
And thank you for getting the name of the show in there too.
Oh, you're welcome. I try to fit
Flip it
everything
that
in.
way.
You know, the Man with the Yellow Box and all.
That was very clever.
Thank you. So, I mean, the food that we eat is very, very important. It's something that we all do every day, several times a day, and it has a huge impact on our lives. You are what you eat.
Yes.
As much as you want to say yes or no to that, it's the truth. And what we put in our mouths is not only very important to our health, but it's also it's an experience. You know, it shouldn't just be something that we have to do. We might as well enjoy it, and we might as well have the best that we can. And so I feel like the food that I grow feeds us body and soul. It's not only really healthy for us, but it's also something that's very pleasurable to our palate and to our senses and to our minds. So I like to feed people in different ways.
Okay, well, I like to feed people in different ways too, which is why, thanks to you, we have visual aids that will also be snacks. We have some blueberry nut bread made from blueberries.
My blueberries?
Your blueberries.
Excellent.
And we have chocolate, I think the actual recipe says mystery cupcakes, but they're actually made with beets. So if you have children at home that do not like to eat their vegetables, you can hide them in chocolate cupcakes. And I wouldn't exactly call it health food, but it's a little better than, not to name drop, but the Hostess cupcakes. So,
but I'm finding that my CSA members are telling me that when they start to do my CSA, they don't have to hide the vegetables as much because they have more flavor in and of themselves.
Okay.
They're like a natural candy. And the kids tend to just enjoy their vegetables that much more and eat that much more vegetables, and then you end up with healthier children.
You did convince me, because after having you as my guest on the last show, I went out and I became a shareholder.
Excellent.
I think is the correct term,
yeah.
of Farmer Dave's.
Excellent,
and my
thank
kids
you.
are so excited.
Keep them happy and keep them
Keep
healthy.
them happy. And they also helped make the blueberry bread.
Good. The happier and healthier they are, the happier and healthier you will be as well.
Yes, and this is coming from the mother of a 2-year-old whose first word was cheese puff.
Well, soon it will be beets.
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 Beets. Zucchini.
Zucchini. Oh, that's a tough one.
Zucchini.
That's a tough one.
Hey, he'll manage it.
Yeah, maybe kohlrabi will be next.
Kohlrabi. I like
say-
kohlrabi, but it still sounds like something that I've heard out of Star Trek. Okay, so
looks
we
like
don't
it
have
too.
to have a part 3. Why don't we get to some of the
Sure.
questions? Now, CSA stands for Community
Supported
Agriculture.
Yeah.
How long have CSAs been around?
They've
Is it
been
something
around.
new?
They've been around for at least 30 years. Some people say they started in Western Massachusetts. Some say that they started in Japan or Germany. Wherever they began.
They just seem to have gained popularity within the last 5 or 10 years or so.
Yeah, and there's a reason for that.
Which is?
Our food system has changed. And the growth in the CSA movement, if you will, is a reaction to the change in our food system. People are seeing that our food system, people long for yesteryear. They long for the way food used to be when we were kids, the way grandma cooked. And what they're finding is they can't get that food anymore in our modern food system.
Because it's all processed.
Well, a lot of it's processed. We have a capitalistic system. I believe in the capitalistic system. It's very good at production and making things efficient and getting things to market on time in a good condition, inexpensively. But we have to recognize that there's also been a huge quality loss and a diversity loss as well, some would argue. So that food that we used to have oftentimes isn't there anymore, and the flavors are different. And what's also happened is many people that have grown up with our modern food system now don't know what was once there because they haven't experienced it. So if somebody under the age of 30, 40, in many cases, depending on their upbringing, might not recognize that my beets taste different than what the supermarket market
Yeah, I'm
might
just
offer.
flashing over. Have you ever seen WALL-E, the movie?
WALL-E.
Yeah, the captain.
so.
They have farms and you can grow pizza. Yeah, he's never been exposed to it. So, I'm sorry, that just made me think of it.
Maybe I should make a new WALL-E movie or something.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, no, he's going to figure it out. They came back to Earth.
So to get back to your original question, CSAs have been around for at least 30 years now. I began mine about 6 or 7 years ago. They are becoming more common because it is kind of a movement that's, Massachusetts tends to be a much more progressive state and is looking for the new and the better that the world can offer. And I believe the CSA is that, something that we can improve on, or something that will improve our food system. I think I mentioned this the last time, the CSA is radical and reactionary at the same time as a response to our present food system. It's going back to the way food was, and it's also changing things to a different method.
Okay. Now, I've also heard in passing over the last who knows how many years, a farming co-op. Have you ever heard of that term? Is that like when people actually
well, a farming,
yeah,
a co-op,
a
food co-op?
Yeah,
or
food co-op.
I mean, a food co-op, by its definition, I believe, and I might be wrong on this, but my understanding is that it would be defined as a group of people that get together as a cooperative organization and purchase food either from a farm or from a company, bring it to a central location instead of buying it through a for-profit.
Because I'm also thinking there's also like community gardens where you get a little plot and
in that case,
you have to go and pick your own.
You would be growing your own in your own plot,
Okay.
and you might share it with your neighbors or something
Okay.
like that. But yeah, food co-op is not necessarily
Okay.
directly with the farmer, although it
Because
could
I
be.
think actually this woman down, a former colleague of mine, she lives down in Sharon. And she had like specific times where she had to go pick. It was like a giant farm that I don't know who grew the stuff, but they'd go down with their big yellow box and get X number of this, X number of this, X number of this. So
Was it a CSA?
I don't know.
I mean, our choice style is somewhat like that.
oh, okay.
Where you
She
can,
actually had to go out in the field and pick it, which I
some
thought was-
CSAs are set up
Oh,
that,
okay.
like that. You know,
Maybe
the
it
farms
was.
are trying to reduce, the amount of labor that they need,
Mm-hmm.
and so CSAs are not very well defined. So
Okay.
CSAs could be, one CSA is not the same as another. So I would encourage people that are considering a CSA to do a little research on the one that they're
Okay.
considering. Like you mentioned, some do require you to actually do work on the farm. Some might require that you actually harvest the things
Just
yourself.
terminology is getting
Yeah,
kind of smushed
we
in my
don't
head.
we don't require our members to do work on the farm if they don't want to. Although we do offer certain days when we invite them to the farm. Saturday rather, we're having Garlic Day. When we invite the membership
vampires.
to come to
Oh,
the
sorry.
to come to the farm and help us harvest garlic, we do I do a little teaching segment on how we grow garlic.
And what time is this
10 o'clock.
That
on
sounds really
Saturday.
cool.
Yeah.
Is that on your website?
Yes.
Okay.
Should
Might
be.
have to check that out.
Yeah, and we have a little history of garlic and what you can do with garlic. So it's an interesting day, and people get a chance to see the farm where their food comes from.
Yeah. I'll have to check that out. Although I'm not sure you want my 4-year-old running around because she's also into, playing in the mud and digging up worms and
That's a good thing. I like seeing kids all dirty and muddy.
worm relocation. Yeah,
And a wormy soil is a healthy soil.
that's true.
A soil devoid of worms might not be so healthy. So
And we learned that on Curious George.
see,
Actually, I think we learned
the
that
man
on
with
Cat
the
in the
yellow
Hat.
Oh well, all right. That's another good one.
Yeah. Okay. I think we touched upon this last time because you said at the end of your season you have like evaluations and ask your members or your shareholders
Sure.
what they liked, what they didn't like, what they want to see, what they don't want to see. When you start planning an upcoming season, how do you determine how much of each particular crop you need based on the CSAs, and then you also do farm stands and farmers markets? So
Correct.
how are you sure? How do you plan that? Do you plan that?
We do plan it. It's a big process. About 6 years ago, up until about 6 years ago, I kind of used to just plant by feel, by experience. Oh, it's time to plant some more corn. Oh, it's time to plant some more squash. Oh, it's about time to plant some more cucumbers. Every once in a while, I'd forget something, and I felt it was time to get things in writing.
Okay.
So one winter, we spent a lot of time creating it's about a 600-line spreadsheet of our crop plan. And it went through about 15 drafts that winter. And it was just, I was just picturing the fields and
Okay.
how the fields rotate, when the planting times should be,
Okay.
the size of each planting, given that, should they be seeded in the greenhouse or directly in the field? If they're seeded in the greenhouse, what date should they get transplanted into the field? When should we expect to start harvesting that planting? And then after the first season, it went through a revision.
Okay.
So then, I took what all my experience told me was a good guesstimate of volumes and seeding dates and things like that, and then we just made notes and adjustments, and then with the member survey that tells us whether members want more or less of something.
Okay.
We'll make we'll make adjustments for the next season. But I also have to remember that in some cases, say the members are saying we want more cucumbers. Well, I have to say, was the problem that we didn't plant enough cucumbers, or was there a certain weather event that destroyed the cucumber crop,
Okay.
or a certain insect or disease that
Because
took
I'm
them
thinking
out?
that spreadsheet, like when you plant stuff, when you harvest stuff, that's also pretty weather related. Like
It
if we
is.
have a really wet spring or a cold
Exactly.
winter. Or,
Exactly. So, I have to, take all that input with a lot of grains of salt, and figure out, should we make adjustments or shouldn't we? Or was it a weather-related factor that made the members say that they want more raspberries, or do we need to plant more raspberries, for example?
Okay.
So there's a lot of
So
input
that adds
goes
another
into that.
300 lines to the spreadsheet.
Yeah, yeah, it does. And then, I'm also considering a lot of different crops every year. Should we try growing this? Should we maybe stop growing this? Should we do fewer plantings of this? Do the members want, do they not want radishes every other week? Do they want them every third week on average? Making a lot of changes like that.
What are some of the more unique or interesting crops that you grow that people might not think of Massachusetts?
Well, I just mentioned radishes. We grow,
okay.
several different varieties of radishes. One of my favorite is the French breakfast, which is a longer radish.
I don't think I'd want a radish for breakfast.
I don't know why they gave it that name. Honestly, that's a good question. But it's a variety of radish that is quite common in Europe, and I've also seen it in the Republic of Georgia when I was working there.
Okay.
And it's a longer radish. Usually, think of a radish, small, a little bit smaller than a golf ball,
Yeah.
and round. Well, this one's a long radish, somewhat not quite cylindrical, more just
Like a
long,
carrot shape, almost?
almost, but
Okay.
much shorter than a carrot, only about this long, and it's part red and part white.
Okay.
And it has a slightly different flavor, and it's going to look different in a salad. Beets, we're growing 3 or 4 different variety of beets. Kale, kale is now the superfood. We're growing 3 different varieties of kale.
Wow.
So it's not only that we're growing new items like kale, but we're growing different varieties of them that'll each have their own characteristics.
Now, considering the climate of Massachusetts or New England, can you, in your greenhouses, grow stuff like they grow in Hawaii, like pineapples or macadamia nuts or whatever? Have you ever tried stuff like that? Well, not necessarily those specifically, but something that's not climate specific.
Yes, theoretically I could grow almost anything in my greenhouse, but the question becomes, does it make sense to do that?
Okay.
We grow a lot of crops in the greenhouses. We have almost 2 acres of greenhouse,
Wow.
or not greenhouse, or maybe I should say space under cover, because
Okay.
sometimes it's
you're telling us.
it's a not heated greenhouse in some
Okay.
cases. But we grow a lot of cucumbers and tomatoes, a lot of different greens, from baby bok choys, baby spinach, baby tatsoys, some things similar to mesclun mixes, baby
Okay.
lettuces, a lot of different transplants we start in the greenhouses as well as a lot of different varieties of herbs that will also grow in the greenhouse. But we utilize a lot of the greenhouse space to get a jump on the field production. For example, I mentioned beets. We'll start harvesting beets usually out of the field around the middle of June, which is a good month earlier than typically you would start harvesting. Tomatoes we're harvesting out of the unheated greenhouse usually by the end of June, which again is a good 4 to 5 weeks earlier than normal. But
Yeah,
it's
I
because
finally picked my first tomato today.
but we seeded them in the greenhouse the
Okay.
1st of February. So if it wasn't for those greenhouses, we would have a much shorter season on a lot of our much loved crops. Cucumbers out of the field, for example, we're usually harvesting by the 10th of June. If you just put the seed in the ground, you're not going to start harvesting a cucumber until sometime in July. So we've taken many of our crops that would traditionally be a short 6 or 8 week season and elongated that to a 14 or 15 or 16 week season in the field. And then in many cases, we might have had it for 8 weeks in the greenhouse as well. So we're giving the CSA members a much longer experience as well.
Okay.
In addition to a much
Hey, you mentioned last time it was 9 months.
9 months of the year
Of
we
the
do
year.
the CSA.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, I believe we do have a phone call,
Okay.
and I believe Greg is on the call. Hey, Greg, how you doing?
Hello, everyone. How are you doing?
All right. Got a question?
Just like the last time, I have a lot more to say about my ethnic roots, which stem back to both Czechoslovakia on the maternal side of the family and to the Ukraine on the paternal side of the family. Well, I understand on the paternal side of the family, they also had orchards, in which I don't know if you're completely aware, but the Ukraine, which was once part of the Soviet Union, was known as the breadbasket of the Soviet Union because that was the primary area for extensive farming. I also want to ask Dave if he knows Warren Shaw.
I do know Warren Shaw.
Yeah, because I do call him up on the radio on
Yep.
Saturday morning sometimes.
Sure.
But also, you happen to have any livestock?
All I have is 3 pet goats.
I see. Because my mother told me with farmers, especially if they had to clear out a wooded area and there were stumps, and especially if they were just tremendously big stumps, if they had pigs, those pigs would run into those stumps in almost no time. In fact, the pigs were as smelly and dirty as they happened to be, but they were a great asset. And not only that, they made for very enriched soil. And also my on the maternal maternal side of the family, they also had cows in which they used the manure from the cows, and that created very good soil for growing crops. And speaking of cows, back way back, I guess somewhere in the 20s or thereabouts, there was a disease going around. I'm not sure, but I think it was anthrax. And some of the farmers even lost the entire herd of their cows. And my great maternal grandfather, when they came around to inspect his farm, which was told by my mother, not one cow failed. So, he was a very, onto things type farmer.
Yep.
Okay.
I know Warrenshaw very well. To respond to that part of your question, it's a small farming community, and Warren's farm is on the other side of other side of town from me. He grows some excellent crops and produces some excellent milk and other dairy products. As far as your question about your family heritage out of the Ukraine and the Ukraine being the breadbasket, there are some beautiful black soils in the Ukraine. I also have 2 Ukrainian agricultural interns this year who will be going back to the Ukraine at the end of the season in November, and hopefully taking a lot of the knowledge that they've learned from me on my farm back to them. One of them in particular is very interested in the orchard, as you mentioned, the orchards in the Ukraine, and I actually have him working on a research trial with the University of Massachusetts on my farm in the apple orchard on a new system to be able to get a more organic apple out of the orchard without using insecticides in the last half of the season by having these certain traps in the orchard. So I try to not only create a healthier food system for us here in Massachusetts, but extend that out to other parts of the world.
Excellent. Well, thanks for calling, Greg.
Yeah, and I just wanted to ask Dave, where he's from, the town of Dracut. I'm sure he must know the old Essex bituminous concrete plant up there. That's the place that they make primarily, road paving materials.
The old Essex bitumen plant?
Yes, it's no longer. I think it's now Keating.
Oh, the Keating plant. Yeah, that's right on the Dracut-Pelham line. Yeah. Yep.
So, but I must say that they produce some wonderful asphalt material for roads. And let me tell you, just take a look at Liberty Avenue. 1967 was the last time they repaved that road, and it's still in pretty good shape because there was nothing quite like the original Essex bituminous mix. And I used to work with it with the town of Burlington on the highway department way back, decades ago. And Linda, I have a suggestion for another topic.
Okay.
You may consider having Nick Sayer on your program because he's that wannabe meteorologist.
Yeah.
And I've been plugging him, putting in for years a very good word at all these different TV stations because I speak to a lot of these different meteorologists at all
I
the
know, Nick.
major TV stations.
Okay. I will consider that, but seeing that I have a bunch of questions, I think we kind of need to get back on the topic of CSAs. So
Okay.
thank you
fine
very
by
much
me.
for calling.
Thank you, Greg.
All right. Now, you mentioned a couple of things. When you have goats,
Yes, we have goats.
are they really pets?
They are. My mother will not allow us to slaughter them. I
don't think I could ever eat anything that I met.
I also have a friend of mine who's a farmer that has beef cows and some of
Yeah,
my...
you said that you have the
so we have a meat
add-ons
share
and the
as well.
partnerships.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
And so the meat goes to our CSA members as an add-on.
Okay.
A lot of our waste vegetables and corn leaves and things like that
Okay.
help to feed those animals. But they're on one of the other farms that I utilize for some of my crops, not on the home farm.
Now, I know you opened the box, but I have
opened the box.
one more question.
Okay.
You mentioned organic.
Yes.
Now, are you an organic farm, and how do you define an organic farm? Okay,
I
two
can't
questions.
call myself organic because the federal regulations now say that you cannot say that you're organic unless you're certified organic. And so
Okay.
I'm not certified organic. However, the vast majority of the crops that I grow are either not sprayed or only sprayed with organic sprays.
Oh, okay.
So I try to make sure that the food that I'm providing to my members is food that I myself am willing to eat.
Chemical free.
And I don't want to fill myself full of chemicals. And I tell you, I'm eating my vegetables raw, unwashed every single day. So I'm constantly learning more and more because the natural world is an amazing place. And it's amazing to see all the interconnectedness in that world. And the more knowledge I gain about how that world operates, the better I can figure out how to wrestle an edible crop out of that natural world without the use of all those chemicals.
Oh, okay. So what's in the box? I already sampled the non-chemical cupcakes. But
I can't remember. Did we tried the fennel last week, didn't we? Did we?
think
I
so.
can't remember what we tried.
I
last
just remember the kohlrabi, and it was really good.
Oh, that's right. That was the kohlrabi. Well, this here is fennel. It tastes like licorice.
Licorice, yes, we
Yeah,
did.
yeah, yeah,
too.
okay.
Yes, we did try
Did
that.
we have a large one or a mature one, or was it a baby?
I think it was a really big one.
Try some of this one. This one's a baby
Okay,
one.
how come I have to eat it and you don't?
Because I'm talking.
Okay. Do
How's
I
that
just
for an
like
answer?
chomp the whole thing?
Just chomp down the butt of it, yeah.
Smells like licorice.
Here we have, do you recognize this one? These here are scallions.
Okay,
but
but
it's a
they're purple.
a purple variety. So we grow the white scallions, but again, to kind of create more of an adventure,
Okay.
we also do these purple ones. Again, I could eat it, but
Now, is it normally like in the same market that you would have both color scallions?
in the same market.
Well, like the same geographic area,
That you would have purple scallions and white scallions?
or like purple scallions from somewhere else.
That's a good question that I don't know the answer to.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you. Would you like some
Sure.
scallion with that?
I'm getting my vegetables.
Carrots. I forget if we had carrots last week or not.
Okay, now
I
no,
had
don't
about a
think so.
bunch of carrots.
But I want to know how come. Okay, silly question. How come you get nice, skinny, long, nice, perfect shaped carrots, and whenever I grow them, they look like my fist?
Because of the soil type.
Oh, okay.
So, see, I shouldn't be eating while I'm talking. So I have many different soils. I grow on about 90 acres, and because of the glaciers that we had here 15,000 years ago,
I don't think you're going to want to talk to me if I eat the whole thing. It's good.
cover it
but-
up with some licorice.
Yeah.
Because of the
strong
glaciers,
tasting.
I have a lot of variability in the soil types on which I grow. So I have some very sandy soils, I have some very clayey soils, I have some rock-free soils, I have some fields that are full of rocks. And different crops lend themselves, you don't have to eat for
I
any
don't think I'm
further on
supposed
that.
to eat the whole thing, am I? It's good though.
Different soils lend themselves to different
Okay.
crops. So for example, if I were to plant carrots in a very heavy clay soil, they're going to end up like the carrots that you're describing.
Okay.
But because I have such a diversity of soils, I can choose the soils that will provide me with a nice straight carrot.
Okay.
And they're going to grow much faster also in that nice sandy soil.
Yummy.
Other soils that are kind of gravelly will tend to, so they're kind of sandy, but there's a lot of rocks in them. Those soils will tend to grow, warm up early in the spring because the rocks are, well, first of all, it's sandy.
Okay.
So there's not much water in it. If there's a lot of water, it's going to take longer to warm up in the spring. Also, all those rocks are actually little heat reservoirs in the cold spring. So in April and May, those rocks are going to heat up in the heat of the day
Okay.
or from the sun of the day. And then at night, when you get those really cold spring nights, those rocks are going to be emitting that heat slowly and keeping those nice seedlings right next to them a little bit warmer than they would
Now,
otherwise.
what would you grow in rocky soil?
Corn and beans tend to do the
Yeah,
first corn
corns
and
aren't
beans.
really deep roots.
No,
so-
no, but they
okay.
need that. Both corn and beans don't like to be too cold, so the rocks will help to create that nice warmer climate.
Okay. Now, another question about carrots. Now, and you mentioned some of the baby vegetables that you grow. Are baby vegetables just You pick them earlier, or is it a different breed, like the baby carrots that you get in the grocery store? Well, you wouldn't get them in the grocery store, but I would. That are like 2 inches long. Do they just take one of these and chop them up, or?
That's a good question. In some cases, I can't speak for those companies that produce those, but
I don't
really,
think I can eat the corn raw. Am I supposed to eat corn raw?
oh yeah, I do
Really?
every
Okay.
day. So yeah, baby vegetables are usually just a young version of the adult.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was like a different breed. I shouldn't be talking with my mouth full. I always yell at my kids
I
about
just
that.
broke the bottom of the corn off. Sorry about that.
Whoops.
But we grow corn as well. It's a very highly rated item in our CSA, Shara.
And by the way, you also, I mentioned this before we came on the air. You made my husband's day when you had a recipe for corn and zucchini, and the first ingredient was bacon. He's like, bacon and corn, gotta be good.
You can't beat the flavor of bacon, really.
Can't.
So I love the corn. I eat it raw. I eat at least a couple of ears a day.
Sweeter than I thought it would be.
Now, to eat corn raw, it can't be overripe, and it can't be old.
It can't be overripe.
No, and nor can it be a variety that's selected for machine harvesting.
Okay.
A lot of the sweet corn these days
I didn't know
is
there was
actually
such a
machine
beast.
harvested on very large farms where they have these large machines, somewhat similar to combines that
Corn
harvest
isn't
them.
a good date food. Sorry. I'm just thinking of,
I should
messiness.
probably stop eating so I can talk.
Okay.
Herbs, we also have a selection of herbs. This week we were giving out some sage to some of our CSA members. We're now harvesting, it's only the end of July, and we're already harvesting some red peppers. These are coming out of our unheated high tunnel.
Now, I don't know my peppers. Is that like a sweet pepper, or is that like a really spicy, burn your face off pepper? Smoke's
Well,
not
I'm
coming
okay.
out of yours. Okay.
I hope you came hungry. Kale, I mentioned that we grow 3 different varieties of kale. This one here is our red Russian kale. We also grow a Tuscan kale and a winter boar kale. The winter boar kale will last very long into December. The red Russian will also grow as a baby kale in the greenhouse in the spring and harvest it when it's only about 3 inches tall.
Okay.
Your
Now,
tr-
wait, back up for a second.
I have so many
some of the
vegetables, I have
stuff-
to go quick.
We still have,
You want show 3
25
and 4?
minutes. Why not? Okay, we might wait a while. You mentioned harvesting when it was like 3 or 4 inches. Some stuff that you grow in the greenhouse, you transplant into the field,
Correct.
and other stuff you just leave in the greenhouse?
Yeah, some
Or
things.
does everything?
No, there are some crops that we grow in the greenhouse, and we'll harvest it successively in the greenhouse, especially in the case of the greens. So it'll grow to 3 inches tall. We'll harvest it, 2 to 4 weeks later. We'll
This
harvest
is much
it again.
better than the cupcake.
Are you noticing that the cupcakes and the breads are still there, and we're chomping down?
Yeah,
on them?
I know.
There's no. You mentioned.
Although the bread is good, it's just, this is really good.
We have
making a
different.
mess.
We grow 3 different types of cucumbers. I don't think I brought them all here, unfortunately. We have our regular cucumbers. We have our pickling cucumbers. We also have
didn't
a
realize they were different.
Persian cucumber, which has a very thin skin,
Okay.
and we also have lemon cucumbers. Which
Now, why do they call it
it
lemon?
looks
Is
like a lemon. It doesn't really
Oh.
taste like a lemon, but
was
it has
my
a very
next question.
interesting flavor. I'm making a mess of your floor here. I apologize for that. Eggplant, we grow.
That does not look like a normal eggplant.
No,
That looks like a normal eggplant.
we grow at least 5 different varieties of eggplant. We have your traditional Italian. We have our Asian eggplant, sometimes referred to as Chinese or Japanese. We also grow a Rosita eggplant,
Okay.
which is popular in Sicily and the Caribbean. We also grow a Sicilian eggplant, which is a larger, rounder eggplant. We also grow
Hope I don't have corn all over my
Gilot.
face.
You look great.
Okay.
We also grow a Gilot Brazilian eggplant, which is small and lime green.
Okay.
We also grow a Thai or Cambodian variety, which is kind of double the size of a golf ball.
Okay. That's why you have
Kind of a-
600 lines on your spreadsheet.
Yeah, basically.
Now,
This
what
is,
what are the reasons for growing so many different varieties of, in essence, the same vegetable? Like 5 or 6 different versions of eggplant. Do they all taste differently? Do they all,
Yes.
obviously they all look differently, but,
yes, they all do have a slightly different flavor.
and your shareholders are okay with this?
Yes.
Okay.
And also, It also adds to the breadth of the nutrient intake, I believe,
Okay.
because different plants and different varieties are going to be offering different nutrients to our bodies.
Oh, okay.
And these days, everybody's taking supplemental vitamins. Years ago, people didn't take supplemental vitamins.
'Cause
Is
they're
it-
chemicals.
Is it because of the food that we're eating?
Okay.
So if I can give a wide variety of produce here,
Makes sense.
will people get more nutrients into their body? Because where are those nutrients coming from?
What we eat?
And what we eat grows where?
Well, it
In
depends
the
on
soil.
what you eat.
In the soil, correct?
Yes.
So the nutrients really are coming from the soil.
Okay.
So I, as a farmer trying to grow organically, I'm focused on my soils.
Okay.
The soils are a living being. I'm trying to create soils that are alive and that will be sustainable and be able to provide food for the next 50
Bazillion
plus
years.
100 years, I don't know, long after I'm gone. But I also want to make sure those soils are full of nutrients so that the crops that we harvest from those soils are also nutrient dense. And different crops have the ability to pull different nutrients out of the soil.
Okay.
So having that
why you do crop
diversity of
rotation.
crops
Okay.
will provide us with diversity of nutrients to our bodies.
Okay.
Do you recognize this one?
I don't recognize anything.
If you were Italian, you would recognize this one. This one we don't put in our share very often. It's not very commonly eaten. But if you were from Italy, you would probably recognize it. If you were from the Caribbean, you would probably recognize it.
Okay.
In the
Neither of
Caribbean,
which I
it's
am.
called verdolaga. We usually call it more from the Italian purslane. If you want to try it. This, I've done a little research. This is probably one of the healthiest things you could eat. And a lot of them are gone now, but a lot of the old farmers that I used
Tastes
to
like
talk
something
to,
that I know, and I can't place it.
a lot of the old farmers remember harvesting this 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago by the bushel and bringing it to the area city farmers markets.
Okay.
And the Italians would just gobble this stuff up.
Literally. and
Yet these
figuratively.
days you don't see it. So
Why not?
We,
Is it hard to grow, or?
even though it appears that we have a lot of diversity in our supermarkets, there really isn't as much as there used to be, I believe, because things have become standardized. You know, the eggplant that you eat tends to be all the same looking eggplant.
Like that one.
And this is one that just really didn't make the system, in my
It didn't
belief.
look pretty enough. It looks pretty to me.
Maybe it's one that doesn't ship well, doesn't keep well.
Oh, okay.
Maybe lettuce was a better option. I don't know.
It's pretty good
It
stuff.
was kind of like kind of like dandelions. Who eats dandelions anymore? But years ago,
You can make
people
wine out of it.
you can. But I mean, Italians. I'll still get some older European ladies coming out to the farm in the spring, or more hay farms, going out into the hay field and just harvesting dandelion greens. Before you want to get the dandelion leaves before they start to go to flower. Swiss chard. That one's
Heard about that one.
And this one also is packed with nutrients. Green beans, yellow beans. I assume you know those.
Yes, I do know those. Oh.
We grow shell beans as well. We grow a purple bean. So we grow at least 4 different varieties of beans.
I was told beans are pretty easy to grow, which is why, like in first grade, they always have the kids plant beans to figure out how plants grow, because
Yeah.
you don't want to be that poor little kid that nothing works. I'm going to try a green one. I got a yellow one.
Beans tend to be easy to grow, but they're very time consuming to pick.
Not if you only have one plant.
I don't want to repeat some items that we may have talked about last week, but there's
Why
some
not?
zucchini, summer
Yeah,
squash,
the different zucchinis.
kusa squash. I think I mentioned this one before. This is also known as kusa, as a Lebanese squash. Pipiana is a word for it in Central America. We sell this at a lot of our farmers markets where there's a
Okay.
lot of Central Americans, and they go crazy for it.
Okay.
You wouldn't commonly find it. We have a lot of older Lebanese customers that come out for this, and they cut off the top, ream it out, and stuff it with a lamb and rice mixture. That's a very common
That's kind
meal
of what I
there
did
in
last
the
night
Middle
for
East.
dinner. I got one of those zucchinis and stuffed it with beef and rice.
Beef and rice. Lamb and rice, beef and rice, whatever protein, I suppose.
I worked at a sheep farm one summer during
Did you?
college. Yes, I did.
Whereabouts?
I worked at the Hampshire College Farm Center.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And the reason why they hired me is because I could drive a stick shift and I could drive the dump truck. But I wrestled sheep twice my size, clipping their hooves, giving them their medicine,
I mentioned we grow several different varieties of beets. This one
Yeah.
here is a Chioggia.
Okay.
We grow the
Those
traditional.
are not the same kind that I made those out of,
No,
by the way.
probably not. We also grow a golden beet. We also grow some varieties that we use more for storage in the fall into the winter.
Okay.
And then we can, give those out to the CSA members in March, April, and May.
Okay. Wow.
So
There's a lot
again,
of stuff there.
oh, and then and so now we're starting our
But
fruit
wait,
share.
there's more.
We're starting our fruit share now.
Of which I am a member. Yes,
Um,
and my son, he's 2. He calls these strawberries, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to convince him that these are not strawberries. He don't want to hear anything of that.
Blueberries also.
But they ate this entire thing in the time it takes us to go
drive
from the
home.
pickup place to our house, which is less than a mile. It's like 0.8 of a mile.
We picked over 200 pints of blueberries on the farm today.
Wow.
Here's a few of them.
I had a really nice blueberry bush in my backyard, but Hurricane Irene had something to say about that.
We're just now starting to
kinda
harvest
looks like a-
melons. I could cut this open, but it would probably make a
Kinda
mess.
looks like a cantaloupe, but
It is
it's...
There's many different varieties of
Okay.
cantaloupe. I
Because
grow
all the
about
grocery stores don't have that, like, I don't know what you call it, but there's like these little channels in them.
webbing. Yeah, I know what you mean. There's a word for that. It's not webbing. Webbing is the outer surface.
Yeah.
But see, the comment that you made, shows that the appearance of melons has been standardized.
Ah,
This does not look like the correct cantaloupe to you because it's not the standard look. And
I didn't think it was a correct cantaloupe. I just thought it was something else.
okay. Well, we grow different melons.
Okay.
We grow on the watermelons. We grow a red watermelon and a yellow watermelon. We'll start harvesting those in about another week.
Okay.
We've got some peaches over here. Apples. We won't start harvesting apples probably for another 3 weeks probably.
That early?
Yeah, usually about the third week of
Oh, that's right. We're almost
August.
in August.
Yep. Ginger gold will probably Paula Reds and
Okay.
then ginger golds will be some of our first varieties.
That's like our
And then
favorite
we'll move into the
pastime.
Macintosh and
It isn't fall without going apple picking,
agreed.
in my not so humble opinion.
Yep. Do you want peach?
No, no, thank you.
Okay. All right.
I have plenty at home that you already gave me.
So that's me with my yellow box.
Wow. Okay. How does somebody join a CSA? And when? When's the best time to join?
The best time to join is in the spring before
Okay.
the season gets going. That's on the main part of the season. But if you want to do our spring share, then you should really sign up in January, February, because
Okay.
that will start in March. For our main season, it starts in June, so you usually want to sign up usually in May or April to make sure that there's a spot for you. We also do a late fall share that begins right at the end of October. So that one you want to sign up for anytime in the summer, really.
Okay. See, you can eat now.
Oh, thanks.
Um,
Blackberries will start harvesting in another week or so.
okay. That makes sense because my dad picked some. I think they were blackberries from his yard. And they're like this big. We made ice cream out of them.
I have a variety that doesn't have pickies on them, so they're much easier to pick, and they're a much larger berry as well.
Yeah, they're like dangerous with all of
with those pickies, they can be with the thorns.
Yeah, okay.
The other thing I've noticed though is a lot of our CSA members, not a lot, but several of them, many of them, a large percentage of them, surprisingly, are starting getting into making smoothies.
Everybody, it's like the new thing.
And they're taking
I don't even know
so
how to
many of
make a
these
smoothie.
vegetables, uncooked, raw, and they're just throwing them in the juicer, or is it a juicer or blender?
Either.
They just take all these power-packed vegetables and throw in that whole thing. Rinse it a little bit. We've already rinsed it on the farm. Throwing that right into the machine, along with some blueberries,
It's
raspberries,
another episode
melons.
of Curious George
Yes, that's right.
with the juicer.
That would be an interesting show.
And George had to figure out what the combination was to make the ultimate juice.
Oh, I didn't really know about that one. Did he use Swiss chard? Kale?
No, he was using red food.
That's pretty blah, George.
Well, he's a monkey. He didn't know what the names of them were.
They could have made it a little bit more adventurous than red food.
Well, he had watermelon and apples, and he tried salmon, but that didn't work. Well, it was red.
Okay.
He got it at the farmer's market.
Okay.
His secret ingredient was radishes.
Were they a French breakfast radish, do you remember?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I didn't go into that in Curious George. It's kind of hard to cram something in 12 minutes. A whole story.
They could cram more about food.
I was very disappointed that the farmer's market left before he had a chance to buy more juice. Okay, kind of a couple of questions I'm going to combine. What should a shareholder expect per distribution, and how are distributions managed?
So the shares, we try to create a lot of diversity, as you can see. Depending on the size, whether you get a regular size or a small size, you should expect somewhere between 10 and 15 different items in your share each week.
We definitely have that here.
Yeah, this week we probably have more than 15. Again, I never want to promise too much, but then deliver the world.
A full box.
A very full box, yeah.
A very full box.
Part of our problem is sometimes we're just too generous. But what we do offer is a swap box, so that if you're getting something in your share that you don't like, you can always swap it out for something else.
Okay.
In addition to the swap box, we usually have a donation box. So if you think it's going to be too much food for you, well, the reality is you're getting a lot more than you paid for. So we encourage the members, similar to we're being generous to them, they should be generous. If they think they're not going to eat everything, put it into the donation box so that it goes to the needy.
Okay, can we talk a little more about the donation box and what happens after it leaves the site? Because I know you have like Hunger Relief Partners and Hunger Relief Programs. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
We put so much effort into growing our food. We're very proud of our food, and it's almost like it's part of our family. I want to make sure none of it goes to waste. We're growing this food to make people healthy.
That's really good.
Not to be thrown away. So we want to ensure that every little bit of food that we produce, so long as it's edible and still in good condition, goes to somebody who will enjoy it and actually eat it. So if there's any, like I said, we have the donation box that the members can contribute to. If a member doesn't pick up their share, that food will also go to the needy. On the farm, if we have a lot of something, that will go to the needy. We have trucks coming from Lazarus House in Lawrence and also from the Merrimack Valley Food Bank every single week picking up produce. In addition to that, we have our 20 different CSA locations. Most of those locations are associated with a hunger relief agency. And so any of those shares that aren't picked up, as well as those donation boxes, will go to those people at that location's associated hunger relief partner.
Not to put you on the spot, but do you happen to know if Burlington has a designated partner?
It does, and you did put me on the spot. And
I didn't expect you to memorize all 20 of them. That's why I'm like...
I can't recall
It
the
would be
names
on your
of it.
website. Would it be on your website?
It should be on the website, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's cool.
It's the Burlington, it's like the Burlington Food Pantry.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember the name of it. Thank you for putting me on the spot.
Sorry.
Sorry.
After all this, you feeding me.
Well, like in
and-
Somerville,
yeah.
it goes to the Elizabeth Peabody House. In Gloucester, it goes to the Open Door Pantry. In Lawrence, it goes to Neighbors in Need. In Reading, it goes to the food pantry there at the church.
Okay.
Malden, similarly, there's a food pantry nearby. The Drayton and Tewksbury ones go to the Merrimack Valley Food Bank. What are some of the others? I mentioned the Boston Medical
That's
Center
enough. Well, yeah,
has
you
its
told me
own
about that. Okay.
food pantry.
Okay. Now, you have the CSA program. You also have farm stands, and you participate in farmers markets, correct? What are the advantages or disadvantages of one over the other for someone like me? Why would I do what would benefit me by doing a farmer's market versus just picking up a box at CSA?
If you do the CSA, you'll save money. You'll get more of an adventure.
Adventures.
So you're going to save. The large part of it is saving the money. It's also a convenience thing. You know, you don't have to. You just go and get your share.
Takes
There's
like
not
5
a huge
minutes.
thought process
Not
in
even.
it.
Yeah.
The thought process comes when you get home and you have to figure out what are you going to do with this food.
What am I going to do with Swiss chard? What is this? But I did like the signs labeling everything. This is
Sure.
what Swiss chard looks like. This is what this cucumber looks like.
Right.
This is
Right.
this. You know, the lemon cucumber was lemon cucumber.
Yep. Yep.
This is really a
Oh, so
cucumber.
you saw them.
I
Yeah.
did see them. Well, I saw the sign. I
Yeah.
didn't kind of.
There are some weeks that we might not have enough of a certain item.
Okay.
And we always take care of the CSA first. So, for example, if we don't have that much fennel, we'll probably give it to the CSA rather than
Okay.
sending it to the farmers market. Carrots right now we don't have that many of. You won't see many of our carrots at the farmers market, but I know my CSA members love carrots. It's
And they're
very
really-
high
they're-
on
they're
that
really good.
on that
They're
list.
really good.
You know,
Even
many
with the-
locations, for
even-
example, raspberries this week. We don't have that many. A lot of the raspberries won't be making it to the farmers markets, but the CSA members will benefit from
Well,
it.
my children
So the
appreciated
CSA
that.
members, because they're paying ahead, they're already
Top of the
owners.
list.
They're at the top of the list. They're already owners of the product.
Okay.
So they're taking first priority. And you become, you have that closer relationship with the farm.
Okay.
You're gonna enjoy the rise and fall of the seasons. When tomatoes are first beginning, they're gonna be in the
Okay.
box. Right now, onions are in the box. You won't find many onions at the farmers market. So it's definitely a different experience. But the farmers market, I feel, is better for the people that don't eat much vegetables
Okay.
and are a much pickier eater. And they might not be trying to save money also.
Okay. Back to your spreadsheet. Do you plant crops specifically for non-CSA distribution?
Some of the crops are for non-CSA distribution. There are certain ethnic crops that have not rated very highly with the CSA. Like, for example, the ají dulce peppers are
Okay.
very popular in the Caribbean. And at certain farmers markets, a lot of our customers know us for that,
Okay.
and they come to that market every single week to buy that
okay.
pepper in volume.
So the farmer's market's more like a specific audience. Like
In some
maybe-
cases, in some ethnicities, yeah. So yeah, we will have that differentiation depending on, again, what the CSA members want versus what a certain ethnicity at a certain market might want.
Okay.
There's other greens that the purslane, I feel, that this one we'll put in the share, like I said, once or twice a year. There are some others that we've put in the shares in past years, like Blado. It's a type of amaranth that Central Americans just love, and when we send that to the farmers market, they go crazy for it. But we tried it in the share a couple of times, and people didn't seem to care for it that
Yeah.
much. Another one would be Yerba Mora. It's in the nightshade family. That one also Central Americans go crazy for, but it wouldn't do well in the CSA. So yes, there are certain things like that.
Okay. Now, you mentioned some of the hunger relief programs, but for some reason, my brain is not what it used to be. Your work with Merrimack Valley Food Bank is a separate question. Do you have specific instances, or is that something new where you work with Merrimack Valley Food Bank? Is there a reason why I separated it into a separate question?
Okay. Well, the Merrimack Valley, you have to understand, in the state of Massachusetts, there are 4 food banks.
Oh, okay, I did not know
There's the Merrimack Valley Food Bank, there's the Greater Boston Food Bank, there's one, I believe, in the Worcester area, and then there's one in,
that. Western Mass?
Amherst area.
Okay.
Whately, I forget.
Okay.
Anyway, it's in the Pioneer Valley. So there's 4 food banks in the country, and that's the bank. And the food pantries go to the food banks.
Got it.
So they're like the big overarching ones. We also
Okay.
sometimes will supply food to the produce to the Greater Boston Food Bank as well. They're
Okay.
a much larger food bank than the Merrimack Valley Food Bank.
Greater Boston.
So yeah, I mean, we work. In some cases, we can easily overwhelm a food pantry with our produce because many food pantries aren't that big,
Yeah.
and oftentimes they don't have the capacity to handle
okay.
fresh produce. They might not have enough refrigeration, whereas the food
okay.
banks have the refrigeration
Oh, got it.
resources.
They're like the distribution center.
Exactly. So I mean, we can give them a pallet of product, and it's not a
Okay.
problem. If we gave some of our food pantries even a quarter pallet, if we gave some of our pantries 10 boxes like
Wow.
this, they'd
That's
be
a
like,
lot
what
of
are
food.
we going to do with all this?
Yeah.
And they might not have as many clients too.
Okay.
Different pantries are of different sizes.
Although having too much food at a food pantry probably is a problem you kind of wish that you had more often.
It is until the organizers of
Yeah.
those pantries start to see it happen week after week after week,
Yeah.
and they're like, "What are we going to do with all this?"
Expand!
Because again, some pantries, some communities, the need is not as great as in others. So I
okay.
also tend to learn about the different food pantries and get to know their directors well and learn what the ethnicities are in that area. So that'll give me a better idea of if I have a certain item, which pantry that item would do better at.
Okay.
So yeah,
Another spreadsheet.
I'm very, very, I'm very knowledgeable about a lot of the different ethnicities in our state and in our region, and what those ethnicities.
And you know
like
how to
eat.
cook in each ethnic kitchen.
I tend to eat a lot of food raw.
Oh, yeah, you did
I'm
mention
not the biggest
that.
cook, yeah. Again, I mean, every day I'm just, I mean, what did I have for breakfast today? I had about 6 carrots and some raspberries, several handfuls of blueberries, and
You could have made a smoothie.
peach. But it was so much easier to just, you know, I'm a grazer, I guess. I have goats, those
Yeah,
are
you
grazers.
mentioned-
I'm also a
yeah.
grazer. Just keep,
They do say after a while, pet owners tend to resemble their
thank you.
pets. It's,
What are you saying?
You're a grazer. You admitted it. Okay, we only have a couple minutes left, believe it or not. So, hey, I'm glad you. Thank you for coming back.
You're welcome.
One more question, at least. Okay. Where do you see? Do you have any plans for the future, like growth?
You never
You know, like
know
you're going
what
to
the
try
future's
something
going to
new.
bring.
Do you have any plans for next year?
At this point, I'm looking to more. I'm never going to get to perfection, but
Okay.
I'm looking to come closer to perfection in my product. This winter, I plan to build a new washing and refrigeration area. I'm going to be installing a geothermal system for the heating and cooling of it, and I want to be able to provide, you know, my products. I want to get them out of the field and cooled off as soon as possible, so that the members will have even longer shelf life for them.
Wow.
Because right now, you know, they're getting a share every week,
Yeah.
and the faster I can cool them down, the longer they're going to enjoy it.
Okay.
We'll have information about that new project on our website soon, farmerdaves.net.
Gotta love it. Well, thank you, sir,
You're
for
welcome.
coming
My
last
pleasure.
time and this time.
Great having some snacks with you.
So, yeah, you're still gonna have to take some cupcakes home.
I will.
You know,
We can
that's all
cut
there
up
is
the
to it.
melon later.
You can share them with your goats. You know, Hey,
No.
what are the goats' names?
Do
they have names?
They do. Sunshine, Willie, which is short for Wilhelmina, and Billy. Billy's the
Of
boy.
course, you gotta have a goat named Billy.
yeah.
Thank you again. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in this evening. I hope you enjoyed our discussion, and you really got to check out some of this food. It is totally amazing. So thank you for joining. I'm Linda McNamee, and thank you for watching Something to Talk About. Have a great week. Good night.